Nobody in the room knew it was the last time. That is the thing about final moments. They almost never announce themselves. They arrive dressed as ordinary evenings, wearing the same clothes as all the evenings that came before them, giving no indication that the particular thing about to happen will not happen again. The people present do not hold their breath. They do not lean forward with the special attention of witnesses. They simply experience what is in front of them, the way people always experience things that have not yet revealed their significance. On the evening of June 15, 2009, Bill Withers stood at a microphone at the Songwriters Hall of Fame induction ceremony in New York City and sang. He had been inducted into the hall that night, a recognition that was overdue by most honest assessments, a formal acknowledgement of a body of work that had already embedded itself so deeply in the culture that the acknowledgement felt more like confirmation than discovery. He sang. The room listened. And then the evening ended the way evenings end, and everyone went home. What no one in that room could know, what Bill Withers himself may not have known with certainty, though those who understood him well might have suspected, was that it was the last time. The last time he would stand at a microphone in a public setting and sing the songs that had been his life's most important work. The last public performance of a career that had produced, in the space of 14 years of active recording, some of the most honest and enduring music in the history of American popular song. The last time. And it looked, from the outside, exactly like any other time. To understand what the 2009 Songwriters Hall of Fame ceremony meant, what it asked of Bill Withers and what he brought to it, you first need to understand the 24 years that preceded it. He had stopped recording in 1985. Not with a farewell announcement, not with a press conference, not with the organized narrative of an artist choosing to step back from public life on his own terms. He had simply made his last album, released it, and then, gradually, without drama, ceased to be a public figure in the active sense. He remained present in the culture through his songs, which continued to find new audiences and new moments without any assistance from him. But he himself withdrew into a private life that he guarded with the same quiet deliberateness that had characterized every significant decision he had ever made. For 24 years, he gave very few interviews, he attended almost no industry events. He did not release new music or announce projects or participate in the ongoing performance of relevance that the music industry required of artists who wished to remain visible. He lived in Los Angeles with his family. He was, by all accounts, genuinely content, not performing contentment, not managing a public narrative of graceful retirement, but actually living the private life he had always valued more than the public one. The music industry found this difficult to process. Industries are built on the premise that artists need them, that visibility requires institutional support, that relevance is a managed condition rather than an inherent quality of work that is genuinely good. Bill Withers' continued cultural presence in the years after 1985, sustained entirely by the songs themselves without any promotional activity on his part, was a quiet refutation of that premise. His music remained because it was true, not because it was marketed. But the industry, being the industry, could not entirely leave him alone. There were periodic overtures, offers of comeback opportunities, compilation projects, licensing requests, the various mechanisms by which the business of music attempted to re-engage with talent that had chosen to exist outside its structures. Bill declined most of these with the same courteous, unhurried firmness that had always characterized his dealings with institutions that wanted something from him. What he could not entirely decline were the honors. Because the honors, unlike the commercial overtures, were not about what he could do for the industry. They were about what he had already done. The acknowledgement of a completed achievement. The formal recognition of something that already existed and did not require him to do anything new in order to deserve it. And so, over the years following his withdrawal from recording, he accepted a small number of significant recognitions, he attended ceremonies, he made brief, characteristic public appearances, always thoughtful, always precisely spoken, always slightly amused by the ongoing fascination with a body of work he considered finished. The 2009 Songwriters Hall of Fame induction was one of these. And it was different from the others in a way that would only become clear afterward. The Songwriters Hall of Fame ceremony in 2009 was held at the Marriott Marquis in New York, a midtown Manhattan hotel whose ballroom had hosted enough industry events to carry in its very air the particular mixture of genuine celebration and professional obligation that such evenings always contain, tables of industry figures. A program that moved through inductions and performances with the organized efficiency of an event that has been produced many times before, the accumulated warmth of people who have come to honor something they genuinely believe in, mixed with the self-consciousness of people who are aware that they are performing the honoring as much as feeling it. Bill Withers arrived without the machinery of celebrity. No elaborate entourage, no advanced team, no carefully managed entrance. He moved through the evening with the same quality that had always characterized his public appearances in this period of his life, present, attentive, slightly observational, carrying the ease of a man who had long since made his peace with whatever this world thought of him. He accepted his induction with the characteristic precision of his speech. He thanked the people who deserved thanking. He said something true about songwriting, about what it was and what it asked and what it gave back. He was, as always, exactly himself, no more, no less, no adjustment for the room's expectations. And then he sang. The decision to perform at the ceremony was not, by various accounts, automatic. Bill Withers had not performed publicly in years, the exact duration depending on how you define performance, but certainly not in any setting that resembled a concert or a formal public appearance of musical significance. He was 71 years old. The voice was older than the voice on the recordings. The man was different from the man who had stood at the Carnegie Hall microphone in 1972 or the studio microphone in 1971. He knew this. He was not sentimental about the gap between who he had been as a performer and who he was now. He had never been sentimental about such things. Had always preferred the honest accounting of what was true to the comfortable fiction of what one might wish to be true. But he also understood something that purely technical assessments of voice and performance tend to miss, that the truth a song contains does not diminish with the age of the person singing it. If anything, it deepens. A 71-year-old man singing "Lean on Me" carries the full weight of everything that phrase has meant over the 71 years of a specific human life. The losses, the dependencies, the moments of genuine need and genuine support that accumulate in a life lived with open eyes. He was not performing the song from a distance. He was singing it from inside it, from the accumulated experience of someone who had lived long enough to know that its central claim, that we need each other, that needing is not weakness, was not a sentiment but a fact. He chose "Lean on Me." Of course he chose "Lean on Me." When Bill Withers stood at the microphone that evening and the first notes of the song's introduction began, something happened in the room that the evening's program had not scheduled and its producers had not engineered. The industry audience, the executives, the publishers, the fellow songwriters, the critics and journalists and business figures who filled the Marriott ballroom, became, for the duration of that performance, something simpler and more honest than an industry audience. They became people. People who knew this song in the way that only songs embedded in the deep tissue of a life can be known, not as a piece of music they had professionally assessed or commercially exploited or cataloged in a career's worth of industry knowledge, but as something that had been present at specific moments of their specific lives, at funerals, at difficult conversations, at the particular ordinary evenings when two people had needed each other and had found, in 3 minutes of music, the words for what they were feeling. He sang the opening verse with the unhurried patience of a man who is not performing speed or energy or the vocal pyrotechnics that might demonstrate to a skeptical room that age had not diminished him. He sang it the way he always sang, as if the song mattered more than the impression the singing made, as if the truth of the words was more important than the technical quality of their delivery. His voice was different from the voice on the recording, older, more textured, carrying in its grain the specific wear of 7 decades of living and the particular kind of use that a voice receives when it has been employed for genuine communication rather than performance. It was not the voice of the young man who had recorded "Lean on Me" in 1972 in an apartment in Watts. It was better. Not technically. Technically, the younger voice had qualities that time had changed. But in the way that matters more than technique, it was more true. It was the voice of someone who had lived inside the song's central claim for 37 additional years and had found it, after all of that living, still accurate. The room was very quiet. There is a quality of silence that is different from the absence of sound. It is the presence of attention, the particular stillness that a room produces when everyone in it has, simultaneously and without coordination, decided to stop doing anything except receiving what is in front of them. It is one of the rarest things that can happen in a room full of people, and it cannot be manufactured or organized or produced. It can only arrive when something true enough creates the conditions for it. That silence arrived in the Marriott ballroom as Bill Withers sang "Lean on Me," not the polite, respectful silence of an industry audience honoring a legend, not the performed attentiveness of people who know they are supposed to listen carefully and are making a visible effort to do so. The real kind. The kind that happens when the thing in front of you is so true that the normal social machinery of being in a room with other people temporarily stops mattering. He reached the chorus, and the people in the room, the industry figures, the executives, the professionals who had spent their careers in the unsentimental business of music, began, quietly and without apparent decision, to sing with him. Not all of them immediately. It started in certain parts of the room and spread. The way things spread when they are genuine, not through social pressure or performance, but through the simple recognition of people finding themselves doing something they had not planned to do, and discovering that it felt more right than not doing it. By the second chorus, most of the room was singing. Bill Withers stood at the microphone and let it happen, the way he had always let it happen, not conducting it, not encouraging it with the techniques that performers use to invite audience participation, but simply creating the space in which it became possible and then stepping back into the truth of his own singing while the room found its way to the truth of its own. He had done this before. In Carnegie Hall in 1972, in countless performances across 14 years of active touring, he knew what this felt like. He knew what it meant when a room full of people stopped being an audience and became, for the duration of a song, something that looked more like a community. What he may not have known, what none of them could have known, was that this was the last time. The song ended. The room returned to itself. The applause, the standing ovation, the organized enthusiasm of an industry audience expressing genuine feeling through the forms that industry events provide for the expression of genuine feeling. Bill Withers acknowledged it with the warm, measured grace that had always characterized his relationship with public recognition. Present, appreciative, neither overwhelmed nor unmoved. He left the stage. The evening continued. The program moved to its next moment, the way programs do, and the particular thing that had happened was absorbed into the larger flow of the evening, and then, as the evening ended and people dispersed into the New York night, into the larger flow of time. In the days that followed, there were write-ups, reviews, the professional accounting of what had occurred. Critics and journalists noted the performance with the respectful language of people recording something significant. They wrote about the voice, about the song, about the quality of the moment when the room had begun to sing. They situated it within the larger narrative of Bill Withers' career and legacy and the ongoing cultural life of his music. None of them wrote this was the last time, because none of them knew, because it did not look from the outside like a last time. It looked like what it was, a man who had made great music, accepting a deserved honor, performing with the honest authority that age and experience had not diminished but deepened. It looked like something that might happen again. It did not happen again. In the years following 2009, Bill Withers remained the private, thoughtful, occasionally publicly visible figure he had been since 1985. He gave interviews, rare, carefully considered, always precise. He attended the Grammy Lifetime Achievement Ceremony in 2015 and spoke with the characteristic directness of a man who had spent decades thinking clearly about what he wanted to say and had arrived, by that point, at a compression of wisdom that made every sentence feel considered. He was present in the culture through his words and through his songs, which continued to move through the world without him, finding new moments and new people with the easy inevitability of things built from materials that do not age. But he did not sing again in public. The 2009 Songwriters Hall of Fame performance had been, without announcement or intention, the final chapter of a performing life that had begun in small Los Angeles clubs in the late 1960s and moved through every scale of venue that the American music industry offered, from bowling alleys to Carnegie Hall to the stages of international tours. The chapter had closed in a Marriott ballroom in Midtown Manhattan, with a 71-year-old man singing a song he had written 37 years earlier in an apartment in Watts, and a room full of industry professionals forgetting to be industry professionals for the duration of 3 minutes of music. When Bill Withers passed away in March 2020 at the age of 81, the tributes that followed all circled the same essential truth, that the music he had made was still present, still active, still doing the work it had been built to do. They played his songs in hospital windows during the pandemic lockdown. They sang "Lin on Me" from apartment buildings in cities around the world. The songs moved through the crisis with the particular ease of things that had been made for exactly this, for the moments when human beings most needed to be reminded that they were not alone. He was not there to hear it. He had not been publicly present since 2009. But the songs were there, doing what he had always trusted them to do when he released them into the world and stepped back. The last time Bill Withers sang in public was not a farewell. It was not staged or announced or shaped by the awareness that it was final. It was simply an evening, a formal occasion, a deserved honor, a performance given with the full honesty of a man who had always given everything the truth required and nothing more. What made it last was not what happened on the stage. What made it last was what happened in the room, the silence, and then the singing, and then the particular quality of a moment when 300 industry professionals forgot their industry and became, briefly, the people they had been before the industry found them. That is what Bill Withers had always done. From the beginning, from Ain't No Sunshine and Lin on Me, and every song that followed, he had made music that temporarily suspended the distances people erected between themselves, the professional distances, the social distances, the careful distances of people who have learned to protect themselves from feeling things too directly in public. His music dissolved those distances. Not through force or manipulation or the entertainment techniques designed to produce emotional responses on schedule, but through the simple, radical act of saying something true and trusting the people listening to recognize the truth of it. He said it for the last time in public in a Midtown Manhattan ballroom in June 2009. Nobody knew it was the last time. The room sang along, the song ended. And everything that followed, the silence, the years, the private life, the pandemic, the tributes, the songs playing from windows and speakers and phones in the hands of people who needed them, was the proof that the last time had been enough. It had always been enough. There is something worth sitting with in the particular shape of that final public performance, its modesty, its lack of ceremony, the complete absence of any indication that the people present were witnessing something they would not see again. Most careers end with some form of announcement. A farewell tour. A final album credited as such. A press statement, a public gesture, some organized signal to the world that a chapter is closing and that the closing deserves to be witnessed and acknowledged. The music industry is built, in part, around the management of these moments, the production of endings as events, with all the commercial and emotional infrastructure that events require. Bill Withers's public performing life ended with none of that. It ended with a song in a ballroom, a room singing along, and then a man walking off a stage the way he had walked off every other stage, quietly, without theater, returning to the private life that had always been more real to him than the public one. The absence of ceremony was not accidental. It was entirely consistent with everything he had ever been. A man who had arrived at his first recording session at 32 without fanfare was not going to arrange a farewell at 71. A man who had declined the Motown machine was not going to perform his own ending for an industry audience. A man who had stepped back from recording in 1985 without a press conference was not going to announce his last performance in 2009 with the architecture of a final goodbye. He simply sang. And then he stopped. And the songs, the real legacy, the thing that had never required his presence to remain powerful, continued without him, the way they had always been designed to continue, independently, honestly, belonging to anyone who found something true in them. That is the final gift of the last time he sang in public. Not the performance itself, though the performance was true, but what the performance demonstrated, one last time, before the silence that followed it, that the music and the man were two separate things, and that when the man stepped back, the music did not diminish, it remained, as it always will. If it ain't broke, don't fix it. Bill Withers,